How do you know if you're prepared to transition into retirement? Or maybe you're close to retirement, you're 1 year away, you're 5 years away. And how do you know that you're ready to jump into that next step called retirement? Well, today we're going to go over a 10-point checklist to help you understand if you're prepared to transition into retirement. I'm Scott Sierens. I run a retirement planning firm where we partner with families and individuals to help them minimize taxes, make work optional, and invest and retire with confidence. Point number one on our checklist is, do you know how much you'll need or what your expenses will be on a monthly or annual basis? Folks, without understanding this, we really won't be able to get through the rest. So understanding how much you'll need on a monthly or annual basis. How much do you need to maintain your lifestyle? Groceries, gas, utilities, or just, from an entertainment standpoint. Then on top of that, you want to take a look at maybe some of the what if types of costs. What if you need to replace your roof? What if you need a new car? What if the furnace breaks down? Have you thought about those as well and kind of put in some contingencies in regards to those types of expenses? Then moving on to the next types of expenses. I'm assuming in retirement, you're going to want to do some things. Maybe you've got hobbies, travel. Maybe you want a vacation home somewhere warm. All of those types of expenses, have you thought about what those could be either on a monthly basis or on an annual basis as well? And then our last point is, have you thought about Medicare? Have you thought about taxes? Those will also add into your monthly expenses. Understanding your monthly expenses. Now, I didn't come out and say, hey, you've got to have a budget, but to understand one of our further points of, will you have enough? You first have to understand, what are your monthly expenses going to be? Point number two, do you know when to take Social Security to help maximize your benefits? Now, there are a lot of Social Security calculators out there, but unfortunately, I don't think that they take everything into account that you should think about. So I find a lot of people are doing Social Security calculations based upon how much they'd make and how long they think that they might live. But I feel like this is really missing out on a very critical point, which is how much have you saved up for retirement? You see, if you haven't saved enough, and then based on how much you need, if you take Social Security too early, you could potentially run out. Or maybe you've saved up a ton for retirement. Social Security isn't going to make a huge impact on your future income needs. Well, then maybe you want to take it a little bit earlier and reinvest it. So I feel like Social Security comes down to not only how long do you think that you'll live, how much you'll be taking in, but it also comes down to how much have you saved up from a retirement savings standpoint. Now, another thing that I want to just mention when it comes to Social Security is that if you're a couple listening to this, when one of you passes away, you only get to keep one of the two Social Securities. You get to keep the higher of the two. So have you thought about and planned for that when one person passes away, that the other person, the remaining spouse, will have enough to continue to live and maintain their lifestyle? So some of the things that we always work on with clients is, maybe not necessarily taking Social Security at the same time, delaying one as long as possible, finding another great starting spot for the other one. And then what we call is bridging the gap, or taking funds out of the retirement savings to help let that Social Security grow. Everybody's plan is different, but there are some thoughts in regards to when should you collect Social Security? Do you have a plan for it as part of your retirement preparedness checklist? Okay, our third point on being prepared for retirement, or knowing that you're ready to make those next steps, is, and I know this is common sense, do you have enough saved? You see, after you think about number one, understanding your monthly expenses, then taking out number two when you're going to take Social Security, or maybe you have a pension or some rental income. So expenses minus income. We all know that Social Security was not meant to make up all of our retirement income. And so therefore we have what we call as an income gap. Expenses minus income is our income gap. And so based on that income gap, have you done the calculations? Do you know from what you've saved up that you've saved up enough to cover that income gap? So whether that's $1 million, $2 million, $3 million or more, or whatever it is that you have saved up, is that enough to cover that income gap? All right, the fourth point in our checklist of helping you develop confidence to take those next steps in retirement is if you've gone through point number 3, point number 2, and point number 1, and you know that you have enough, you know how much you're going to need to withdraw on a monthly basis. Point number 4 then is, do you know which accounts to take from first, second, third, and as you go through retirement? You see, you might have been saving up in different types of accounts. Maybe you've saved into a 401k. Maybe you have money in a Roth IRA. Maybe you've got money in a brokerage account, an individual account, a trust account. You might have money in a lot of different locations, and it can feel very overwhelming if you haven't created a plan of where you're going to withdraw money from first, second, third, or maybe it's on an annual basis. You see, when working with clients, we really look at this from a tax perspective of how we can help minimize not only their taxes on an annual basis, but also reduce their long-term tax burden. So when it comes to your retirement, point number 4 is, do you have a plan of which accounts you're going to withdraw from and when you're going to withdraw from them? A lot of times, in just personal opinion, if you have those tax-free accounts like those Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, a lot of times what we like to do is save those for later on. So we put those more in kind of a growth aspect. We save them for later on because my belief is, with all of the current government debt that is out there, that to pay for that government debt that we have, or that federal debt that we have, at some point in time, taxes are going to have to go up to cover that debt. Well, if we feel like taxes are going to go up in the future, that's when it's a great time then to make withdrawals from those tax-free accounts. So just a little tidbit of information there. But when it comes to your retirement, point number 4 is having a plan of which accounts you're going to withdraw from and when you're going to take the money from them. Point number 5 is, have you addressed longevity and inflation risk? I find most people don't want to run out of money. So have you thought about how long you might live and how your money is going to continue to grow to last as long as you will? And then what about inflation, the cost of goods and services continuing to go up? As we are in 2023, we just went through 2022, which we saw a lot of inflation in the market and in the economy. Gas prices, we saw it with food prices, travel prices, you name it, across the board, the cost of goods and services continuing to go up. So have you addressed this in your plan? How have you addressed this in your plan? What I believe is that we need equities, so you could look at that as stocks or mutual funds or exchange traded funds, focused on equities, focused on growth in our plans to help us keep up with, again, longevity, but also to help us keep up with the cost of goods and services going up over time. Do you have something, do you have an asset or assets in your plan that you believe will keep up with, or at least outpace inflation, so that way, as you continue to live, as you can continue to need money, as you can continue to do the things that you want to do, you can afford to do the same things over time, and you're not having to take a lifestyle cut as you get older. So think about that. Make sure you have assets in your plan that will grow and outpace inflation as time goes on. Because one of the common mistakes that I see is that as people go into retirement, they actually get too conservative. Sometimes they're in target date funds, or sometimes they're just taking these tests and they feel like, oh, well, because I'm older, I should be more conservative. Well, think about this. You might retire in your 50s, or if you're retiring in your 60s, or even in your 70s, you might have 20, 30, or 40 years that you need your money to last. That's a long time. And so based on that long time, you need money growing in your accounts to outpace inflation. So back to it. Point number 5 was, have you addressed in your accounts, in your retirement plan, have you addressed inflation and longevity risks? Continuing on, point number 6 is, are you prepared to handle market volatility? As I just mentioned in point number 5, I'm a big believer that for retirement, we're going to have money in equities to help make our money last, to help our money keep up with inflation? Well, having our money in equities means that we're going to have market volatilities, or the ups and the downs in the market as time goes on, where the market might correct. We might experience bear markets. We'll most likely experience more recessions. So are you prepared to be able to handle that? Now, there's two parts to this that I would suggest being prepared by. One is, do you have a buffer in your retirement bucket? So that way, when the markets do go down, you've got a pool of funds to go to that aren't subject to the same volatility as equities are subject to. So that way, you've got money to go to be able to withdraw and continue to live your lifestyle as the equity portion of your assets bounces back up, like we've seen in the past. The other portion is from a retirement income, or the withdrawals that you're making. Since none of us can predict what the market will do in the future, none of us have that crystal ball, but we do know that it is going to go up and go down and could be volatile over times. If we do come to another market correction, or if we do come to another bear market, are you prepared? Do you know, or do you have guardrails? I'm going to call them guardrails. This is what we use with our clients as income guardrails. Do you have guardrails in place, knowing when you need to adjust your income? Not shut off the faucet. Don't worry, just because the market's falling, the world's not falling apart. We don't necessarily need to turn off all of the retirement income, but knowing when you need to make slight adjustments down. But the good thing is the market also goes up. And so knowing when we hit those upper guardrails, and you can make slight adjustments or great adjustments on the upward side as well when it comes to your retirement income and retirement withdrawals. So do you have that plan? Are you prepared to handle market volatility? Do you have your buffer of assets, right? Your pool of funds not subject to the same volatility, so you know where you can make your withdrawals from? And then the other part of that is, do you know when you can when you can or need to make an adjustment, either reducing your withdrawals, or when the market treats us well, to increase your withdrawals and take more out as well? Okay, point number 7, and my favorite subject, which is taxes. Are you prepared for the potential of taxes going up in the future? Or another way to say this is, do you have a plan to reduce your long-term tax burden? And if you have an IRA, 401k, 403b, 457, any one of those types of accounts, you have yet to pay income tax on any of that money that you've saved up. So every dollar that you take out, you're going to get taxed on. So you have to ask yourself, do you think taxes in the future will be the same, lower, or higher than where they're at today? And if you have a brokerage account, an individual account, trust account, on those types of accounts, you're going to get taxed on gains, interest, dividends. So unless all of your money is sitting in a Roth IRA, which is the account where it grows tax-free and you make withdrawals tax-free, you're going to be looking at taxes at some point in your retirement. So do you have a plan to help not only minimize your taxes today, but to also help reduce your long-term tax burden? So there's a lot of different strategies when it comes to reducing your long-term tax burden. I mean, that could be how you're going to structure your withdrawals. We talked about that earlier. Which accounts are you going to take your money from? Maybe you're looking at qualified charitable distributions, donor advised funds. If you're still working, can you put your money into a health savings account? Can you switch which accounts you're putting your money into to help reduce your long-term tax burden? Maybe you need to look at Roth conversions or tax-exempt funds, or just having a long-term focus versus a short-term focus when it comes to your brokerage account or individual account or joint account. So that way you're looking at long-term capital gains versus short-term capital gains. Folks, there's a lot when it comes to taxes. Each and every year with our clients, we do a year-end planning and tax strategy meeting where we have a 20-plus point tax checklist that we're going through to help not only minimize today's taxes, but to help reduce the long-term tax burden. All of these items, make sure that you're talking with not only your financial professional, but also your tax preparer to find out which of the strategies are right for you. We also have a video called 11 tax strategies for high income earners. If that's something that'll be of interest to you, I'm going to put a link to it in the video so you can see up above. If you click on that, you'll go to our video, 11 tax strategies for high income earners. Okay, our 8th checklist item, and knowing if you're prepared enough to make that transition into retirement, is do you have a plan for healthcare costs? We talked about earlier, one, having a plan for Medicare, but also, do you have a plan in regards to long-term care needs? Whether you might need to go into a nursing home or assisted living facility or prefer home health care. Folks, it's just part of life. At some point in time, we might need help. We might need help transferring from room to room, going to the bathroom, making our breakfast, lunch, or dinner, getting dressed in the morning, going and bathing, showering. And just to, I'll say, dispel a misconception out there, Medicare does not necessarily pay for long-term care needs. Medicare is not going to pay for the nursing home or the assisted living facility or a home health care aide to come in and help you out. And those costs can be really, really expensive. And so do you have a plan to be able to pay for that? Maybe you're able to self-insure, which means just paying from your retirement savings. And if you've saved enough, maybe you've saved $2, $3, $4 million, and you've looked at life and you say, you know what, when that happens, I'm just going to pay for my retirement savings. Or maybe it's more important to you that that retirement savings gets passed on to your beneficiaries or to your children or grandchildren or to a charity. And if so, well, then have you transferred the risk to an insurance company? And so have you thought about that? Have you thought about long-term care costs? If you know somebody that's gone through long-term care, do you mind just commenting in the comments below and letting us know how much you've seen in regards to how much it could cost on a monthly basis for an assisted living facility or a long-term care facility or for home health care? I think people don't typically understand this or feel this until it actually impacts them. And so maybe if we just share below where, like, kind of general location of where you're from and how much you just see from a long-term care cost standpoint, it'd help others understand the magnitude of how healthcare costs could really impact what they've saved up and could really impact not only what they've saved up, but could drastically reduce what they've saved up if they have decided not to transfer the risk and pay those costs from their own pocket. Number 9, do you have your estate plan nailed down? When I say estate plan, this comes to a lot of different things. First is, do you have the proper beneficiaries listed on all of your accounts? When something happens to you, will the money be going in the proper direction? Have you put a will in place? Or a trust? Let's just say you have some real specifics in your situation that you want money to go to specific people at specific times. Or let's just say you have a grandchild that you want to list as a beneficiary, but you don't want them to get all of your money or all of the money that you want to give them until they at least turn 18 or in their 20s or in their 30s, because maybe they wouldn't properly manage it otherwise. So then you might need a trust in place. So do you have your beneficiaries listed? How about a will? How about a trust? And then how about your powers of attorney? Your healthcare powers of attorney, so somebody that can help you make healthcare decisions. But then what about your financial powers of attorney, or sometimes also called powers of attorney of property? You see, if something happens to you and you're no longer able to pay your bills, if a client's child was to come into me, but the client's still alive, and the client's child says, hey, I'm just here, I want to, help my mom or help my dad just withdraw some money so they can pay their bills, I'm not able to make those withdrawals based on the child's request unless they have that power of attorney. I'll call it financial power of attorney or property power of attorney from a property standpoint. You see, it's really important that you have that. We'll never know when our health might change. And so being prepared in advance really helps those that are going to help take care of you. And so do you have your estate plan in order? Okay, our last item, number 10 on our 10-point checklist when it comes to being prepared, knowing if you are ready to transition into that next step called retirement. And it's not even related to your financials. It's not related to your estate plan. It's not related to taxes. Can you guess what it is? It's actually just related to you. Do you know what you're going to do with your time? You see, I find a lot of times people can be very financially prepared. They might have all of their ducks in order when it comes to having their estate ready. We can have the best tax plan in place. But if you really want to enjoy your retirement, do you know what you're going to do with your time? Have you thought about what activities you might be doing or hobbies of where you're going to be spending your time? You see, a lot of times we say, hey, I find that people say that they're going to travel. Well, you can only travel so much. You can be a snowbird, right? You can go somewhere else for the winters. You can go somewhere warmer. But once you're there, what are you going to do with your time once you're there? And so one big part of being prepared for retirement is, have you thought about what you're going to do with your time? You know, a lot of times I find, or some good tips in regards to this, is I find that people sometimes test out retirement, meaning start to go part-time at work. And now you've got maybe a 4-day weekend or a 5-day weekend. And in that 4-day weekend, what are you doing with those extra pieces of time? Are you filling them in? Are you starting to find activities? Another thing that I find is people join groups, people join clubs, people join or start new activities. And so I really am going to push you on this last one. Have you thought about what you are going to do with your time? So that way, if you've got checklist 1 through 9 all checked off, if you check off number 10, I feel like this is really going to help you go into retirement with a whole lot of confidence. All right, so there you go, the 10 points to check off to understand if you're prepared to move into those next steps of life called retirement. Checking those off can really help you feel confident as you transition into that next stage of life. I hope you found today's video to be of value and benefit. And if so, check out our YouTube channel as we're continuing to come out with more videos each and every week to help you be prepared for retirement, to help you invest and retire with confidence. I look forward to our next conversation to help you enjoy life today and be financially prepared about your tomorrow.